morning. This is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul
and Jolene. And today we're talking about shopping in RPGs, which is something I never actually thought I would have to talk about, but somebody brought it up and here we are.
Yes. Think you ever thought about it as a subject, since you guys as role players like shopping in RPGs?
So this is the way that it happens for us, right? And I think this came about because Saul was trying to teach the boys about role playing, right? Actual role playing. And he also wanted them to stop asking for really high magical items because they think that you can buy them in a magic shop in a town, which you probably can, but you can't just go in and say, I want blah, 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 and there it is. So when the kids were young, we would get into a town or a situation, and one of the things that Alan always wanted to do was go fishing because he had gone fishing with his uncles and thought it was cool. So,
oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So Saul would always make time if there was a docks or we were next to the ocean or there was a river for Alan to go fishing, which, of course, we were very indulgent of the kids and they could do whatever they wanted. So that was just a fishing expedition. So then he would roll to see how many fish he could catch and all that kind of stuff. We would get into a town and, in D&D, you have to have provisions and stuff for when you're going out. Right. So that's like a built-in shopping thing. But for the boys, they wanted to know, they needed to fix their weapons. They wanted to get a different weapon, or maybe they wanted something that they discovered they needed when we were out on the trail and they didn't have. So we would go to the shops and Saul would make funny characters, NPCs, and then the boys I would always go, okay, we need more healing potions. So we're going to go somewhere where we can get healing potions. And
usually, I try to anyway.
And I always did because these people got hurt all the time because they had no, don't run at the monster. I don't know what that's called. Restraint.
Yes.
So for us, it was always fun. And I always told the boys, well, we need to take a bath while we're in town because I'm thinking of it as, you're out on the trail for a while. You're going to stink, dude. You got to take a bath.
A little dusty.
And get food and rest in an actual bed for a couple nights or whatever our parameters were.
So shopping entails quite a bit more than just like going to a store and buying stuff. There's for you guys, the group I was running, there was this whole, you want to rest a little bit, you want to eat good food, not just trail rations or whatever you guys were eating. And you're right, it became this big deal. And it wouldn't happen all the time, I don't think.
No.
But for some reason, every once in a while, you guys would roll into town, especially, I guess, if you'd been on the trail, as you say, for a long time. You're like, oh, I want to especially you should take a bath. And the ladies would take baths, and then the characters, the other players would run around trying to get stuff that they, like you said, they find out what they needed supposedly and repair stuff and look for magic items, which I totally said, no, there's no magic item shops. This doesn't exist. But they finagled me at one time, and much later they go, oh, I'm going to go to, we were in Suzeo, I believe.
We were either in Suzeo or...
Oh, no, it was Waterdeep.
We were in Waterdeep. And also, is Waterdeep where Elminster is? Or is that somewhere else?
No, Elminster is in closer to Suzeo. He's up in above Cormier. I forget.
Because they wanted magic shops because these guys were into, magic stuff. Because that's what you do, right? Especially in Waterdeep, we were like, well, it's Waterdeep. It's a big town. There has to be a magic shop here.
Yeah. There was a magic shop, and they went in there. They're like all wide-eyed open, and I got a lot of gold out of them. So
pulling their money together to buy what they want.
And I think that's another. I think somebody had mentioned that at some point, but it wasn't in any recent anything I read recently about shopping. But one GM said that he uses it to take money out of their
hands.
Yeah, because they're loaded, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you go straight by the treasure tables and stuff. Characters can get really loaded with a lot of coins and cash.
Always change it into gems and sew it into your clothes.
Yes. Well, not sew into your clothes, but convert it to gems, which is lighter, and they can be really valuable and not be very big and not be very heavy. So one way he goes, I know a lot of people are against magic shops, but I put them in so I can get, and I charge
double, triple what
it says in the book. So I think it's kind of interesting, a way of relieving characters of their hard-earned cash.
I found it interesting, this topic, because I didn't really think it was a topic, and then I looked it up, and people have serious ideas about this.
Oh, strong opinions.
Yes.
Let me tell you. And I did the same thing. And somebody posted, what do they think about shopping in RPGs? And I think a lot of the people who were answering the question were playing fantasy games, right? Because it just seemed that way. And I would say in my informal reading and scientific survey that a lot of people hate shopping, especially GMs. And a lot of GMs were the ones who were commenting saying, I absolutely do not allow it. They do it on their off time. They can email me. They can buy stuff out of the book. I ain't gonna waste my time doing it, right? And I'm like, wow. And there was a lot of that very very committed people who say they hated shopping, and this was mainly GMs because it seemed to me, as I was reading from the GM perspective, they were saying, I don't allow my players to do this. I don't want my players wasting my time, and blah 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 and blah blah blah. And then there was some people who were saying, "Oh yeah, my players really like shopping and blah blah blah," and then there was some people who go, "Oh, the players love it so much that he does a PowerPoint presentation of all the shops that are available and what's available in every shop, and every shop has a different NPC. What do you call them? A clerk or whatever you want to call it, owner." And I'm like, whoa, that might be a little bit too much PowerPoint presentation. But you were saying the same thing.
Well, one of the ones I read said he hates shopping and he says he swears that he was in a game where the GM let this player shop for 2 hours for herbs during playtime. And I go, I can see that. That's a long time. It probably wasn't exactly 2 hours, but I'm just saying that if you're going to do something like that, you might want to take it into email or these people have a Facebook page specifically for when they're not playing the game to do stuff like shopping or tell people what they're doing on their off time and different things like that. I was like, now that's committed because,
Well, I think Mark and Heidi, who run the game for Steve and the boys, they do something like that. They have this online.
I think they have Google Sheets or something.
They. Well, I don't think he just uses it specifically for shopping, but
no.
But he uses it for everything. But
everybody's supposed to put in their
2 pages of notes or something.
Yeah, look from what happened in the game, and then maybe what their character's doing.
Yes, on the off time.
Yeah,
which is
very creative
and a hard commitment from players, right? I mean,
yeah.
Can you imagine?
I can imagine.
What's
11:57 at night. I have to have it in by midnight. Going, okay, I'm going to write this really quick because I've postponed it this long.
I kind of come up with some ideas of when shopping in RPGs is kind of okay or
appropriate.
That's a better word. A lot of it depends on the game, right? There's some games like Shadowrun, and I would say a lot of like military games where stuff is important.
Yeah.
What gun you're using, what weapon you're using, and how much ammo you have, and certain kinds of ammo.
And if you're getting augmented and stuff like that, you have to have downtime to do that and recovery time.
Right. And if you're in a post-apocalyptic world where stuff is very scarce, you don't really go shopping, but you go bartering or scavenging. And so that stuff is important, right? You go to you find an old Walmart somewhere that's been picked over, but hey, they might have missed something, or they might not have gone into a certain locked back door or something. So scavenging and stuff. So that's important. I think that those games, it's important to shop, because when somebody pulls out the bazooka and they're like, oh, well, when did you get the bazooka? Right? That might be important, right? It says here that I could buy a bazooka for $25,000. And the GM goes, well, you didn't tell me you're buying a bazooka, right? And so you could get not in trouble, but as a GM, you say
buy whatever you want
out of the book. And I'm like, well,
I heard that one. I go, this one GM says I hand him the book and
that's dangerous.
You can buy whatever you want. I'm like, oh, okay. There's some stuff in that book you probably don't want them to have. I'm just saying. No, Shadowrun is important though, because you need to buy ammo. You need to make sure you have your guns, right?
It's all kinds of stuff.
You have to have all kinds of things.
Those little flying things
and drones, and then you use them up, right? Because you're on a mission.
I blow them up specifically.
Yeah, you do.
I shoot them out of the sky. I make sure that they get broken.
And your gun, you're gonna drop it. You're gonna. Although I think the guys are pretty careful with their sniper rifles and stuff like that, but
they do get bumped around a little bit.
Yeah. Or you have to leave your bags of weapons when you're running away.
Bags of weapons.
then you're gonna have to resupply.
Right. And a lot of it depends on the group, right? If your group really likes shopping, like you said, the boys and you guys, I think the only one that really didn't like shopping or wasn't
Steve.
Well, probably Steve, but he got into it too. I mean,
because Kathy and I are always excited about shopping, and the boys were excited about shopping. I don't think it had a lot of influence from us. I think it had more of the magic items. But this one guy that I read on Reddit, he was saying that he plays with his wife and his daughters and some of their friends, and they're all girls, right? So he's running for all girls, and he says that they took to shopping like fish to water. He says that they were so excited. He didn't think it was, because he'd been playing for years, right, with a bunch of guys, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we got our rations. Let's go."
Yeah,
and his wife and his daughters are like, "Shopping? We get to go shopping?" And he goes, "It's a thing." So at the beginning of each campaign session, he does a special thing for them where he tells them all the shops in the town, and he makes like I want to say rosters, but I think he does pictures of what's there, right, in each of these shops. Wow. And he even puts in pretty clothes and stuff that he knows they like. So, wow. And then they just go to town, right?
Obviously.
And I'm like going, and he goes, it's like the smiles on their faces is worth it. And I'm like going, okay, that's a good GM, right? He knows what his players want.
Like, I don't care what you want. You guys got to go kill orcs.
and he gives it to them before they're off on their adventure.
Yeah, that's amazing. You know what? Another thing is I remember in old modules, right? There was any module in any game, there was a map of a town or something, and it would be that little legend, right? And they're still around, right? When people have maps, and the legend tells you, oh, this is the blacksmith, this is the general store, this is the Fletcher or whatever, whoever makes arrows and stuff, and it goes on, right? And so I remember a long time ago, it was World of Greyhawk. I'm gonna digress a little bit, but there was a whole bunch of us playing, right, in our group. There must have been about 13 of us, right? And so what we decided to do is we were going to play in the World of Greyhawk, that's a
D&D module
setting.
Yeah.
The first one, pretty much one of the first ones. And it was the original one by Gary Gygax and stuff. And there was this one place, and we all divided what area of the world we were going to set our games in. So I picked Perrinland, and it's off, it doesn't matter where it is, but there was all these cities there. There was not very many, but there was these cities, and I'm like, oh, let me look. And there was one, what is it? I used an example. So I made up a city. I drew this it's a large town, actually, not a city. And I was populating it with all kinds of interesting characters and shopkeepers, and I was literally like busting my brain. I remember as a 13-year-old kid, I remember busting my brain thinking, oh, what kinds of shops are there in the medieval world? And after you come up with a good 10 or 12, it's kind of hard to come up with more, especially if you haven't read too many fantasy novels or
especially
history.
How old were you?
12 or 13.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the campaign never happened, right? It just fell apart after that. But I wish I still had those papers. I'm sure they're in my pile somewhere. But I remember doing that, and a lot of it was like, if they go here, I want them to be able to meet somebody and not have any information about it, and me be prepared. But it was all for nothing because they never experienced that. So I think there's this idea that when you populate a town, you put the shops in, people are going to go to those shops, right?
There is that idea, yeah.
And I think that's in the back of the GM's mind and the back of the player's mind when they see a map. They go, oh, now it may not have like the legend of what's there, but sometimes GMs go, I don't care. They can see who's there, so I don't have to go explain. Oh, what's in this wheel? What's that? Just look at the map, right?
Yeah.
That's a good, nice shortcut.
I just want to tell you that when I was looking at Reddit, there was specifically several people went on to rants about the fact that shopkeepers are not interesting characters. Shopkeepers should not be giving out information, and that a lot of times and I think this comes from the video game world. You know, you meet an NPC and they give you the quest, and this one guy goes, "The shopkeeper is not a quest giver," and I'm like going,
I saw that too.
I'm like, oh, wow, you're adamantly serious about this. I don't know what happened to you, but seriously, dude, that's a serious
The general store
there.
led to general store dude led to a total party kill.
Which
Don't
these
trust
other GMs are going, well, that's ridiculous. The shopkeeper could be good for giving side quests. The shopkeeper could just be an interesting character. And I was like, wow, I never even thought about
Some people, like I said, some people have really strong feelings about the shopping, and well, somebody posted something similar in what I was reading, saying that don't make shopkeepers NPCs. NPCs are supposed to be interesting. Do not role play that, because players are going to think that there's something interesting about it, and then they're going to like latch on to something. I'm like, whoa, dude, are you okay?
Well, and I read that kind of comment too, because they were like, if you make them too interesting, they're gonna think there's something there,
Right.
and then you're gonna accidentally send them on a red herring because they're not just shopping; they're there for information.
Right. And I think that's funny.
Well, that is funny because if you think about it, in the Old West or
Yeah,
anywhere,
exactly.
the general store, and this, now me, I grew up in the country, so when you go into town, I remember my mom and my more my grandma's, not my mom, talking to the storekeeper, and I mean, we were in the middle of freaking nowhere, so this is where they got their gossip, their information, and stuff like that,
I didn't
right?
think I never even thought about that. I remember Little House on the Prairie.
Yeah.
And Michael Landon would go into town, and he'd get all the interesting news that's happening in the world, because there was no newspaper, or
there were newspapers.
There was newspapers, but he didn't get it delivered to the freaking Little House on the Prairie. And I was like, wow. And I just thought about that. You're right. They would go into the general store. And where do they get information? Well, they get
other people that come in,
because they need stuff. And what's the news out wherever you're from? And they'll say, well, we have a new president, blah blah blah, or whatever. And, or there's an attack, an Indian attack in such area, or whatever. And I think people forget that. People forget that hubs of information, that the information was instantaneously available to anybody on a phone.
Not everybody has has a phone out in the fantasy world, right?
There's no
nobody's carrying their little computer with them that tells them everything,
right? And there's no way to disseminate information, amass information like that. So I think people are maybe too caught up in the real world and have no imagination of how things could be or how they would be in the fantasy world. Because in the fantasy world, how would you know when stuff happens? There's been this barbarian raid in the north somewhere, or this town got attacked, or this farmstead got attacked by wolves, which that's important information for people who live in that area, who have homesteads or farms out in the wilderness. And if you read Robert Jordan, the same thing happened. They would go into town and find out all kinds of information. There's a glean.
Every book is that way.
So I think instead of looking at shopping as a shopping
chore
event, as a chore, you sprinkle information and stuff like that through the shopkeepers and know the concerns of the town and stuff like that. And I think that makes it a more real world. I mean, I understand that some people don't care about shopping. I remember watching Critical Role when I was watching. I think I only watched the first, maybe the second season too. But I was watching it. At one point, they go into a general store, and the shopkeeper is some sort of creature. I don't know what kind of creature it is. And I don't know, but there was like two of them, and they're like exactly the same. They're twin brothers, but they have different personalities, right? And the person's, the Matt Mercer is the GM, and he's giving them the weird voices and stuff. And then and one of the players goes, "Oh my God, this is gonna be a shopping episode, right?" So he goes, "I'm out of here. Call me in 20 minutes," right? He doesn't leave, but he just like checks out, right? And the other characters are like, "Oh, this is fun." And going shopping and buying stuff, and I thought it was interesting that certain players don't like it and other players totally buy into it, right? And like you said, the boys were really into it. You guys were into it. Maybe Steve wasn't into it as much, but he got into it too
because the boys were so excited.
Yeah, and I think that's an influence too, is movies and books about shopping and being prepared for the situation that might arise, right?
Well, for me, I always, when, Saul says get provisions because you're going out, right? I'm like, oh, I just think about when I was a kid, and he always tells me you can take the girl out of the country, but you still hold on to those little things. Like, we went shopping once a week into town, and you had to get everything you were going to need because they weren't going to go back.
Oh, yeah.
And we went to school on a school bus, and we came back on a school bus, and there was no shopping available during the week, right?
When we lived outside of Salinas
in Chular,
in the middle of a farm, middle of alfalfa fields, it was a ranch house, and we were 8 miles from Salinas and about 2 or 3 miles from Chular, which is a tiny town. But that's where the school was, so that's where we'd get bused. And my mom, I don't know how often we went. It was probably once a week. We'd go into Salinas, 8 miles. It wasn't even that far, but it was a trip.
It's a trip, yeah.
Right, it was a trip. And now it's like, oh, on the way home, will you pick up this? Okay, fine. But back then it was like you had to go into town to buy food,
right,
to buy anything, which I had kind of forgotten about that. And of course there wasn't no like, oh, what's the latest information? We had TVs and stuff and the news, but imagine a world like, not a world where information isn't easily available. I think people forget about that, and I think that's one way to disseminate information, and not necessarily
it probably,
be a quest giver. I mean,
it probably depends on your experience, right? Like Augustine has never had that experience where you only go shopping once a week. If he needs something, he'll go. And he always does it after I get home from work. I need to go to the CVS to get deodorant or whatever, and I'm like, you could have told me. I could have stopped on the way home. I'm already here. And
once I'm home, I don't want to go out.
So. But it's totally different where we live versus other places. And to me, because we used to go camping all the time, remember?
Yeah.
And when you go camping, you have to take everything you need.
Right.
There's no store.
Well, there is, but it's in town. And you don't want to leave once you get there.
Once you get the tent set up and everything, you're like,
unless it's something you absolutely need. Then I think we've done that once where we had but usually when we go camping, there might be like a little store out there, or at the camping site they might have.
Or you have to drive into Watsonville or somewhere. Yeah. We usually camp by the beach, so it's
right, which was really nice.
So those are the things, people get those ideas, right? That you know what you need. If you're going to go out. If you're going adventuring, you're going to want to take the stuff you're going to need, because there's not going to be a store out in the middle of the forest. And if there is, I wouldn't go in.
Well, another thing that I was thinking about is time, right? How much time do you have to play the game? Now, if you're in a weekly game or bi-weekly game at your home where you can't spend 8 hours playing, right? Now,
or even 4.
It's been a long time since I played that long. I don't know why, or 4, but there's a lot of time that you play, and you play often. Then I understand that, because there was another gripe was saying, I play once a month and I only play 2-3 hours a month, and I'm not going to spend 20 minutes of it shopping, right? And I can understand that.
Well, if you only play once a month, then you should do the shopping offline in emails or something.
Well,
right?
that's
Saul's having microphone issues.
Hold on. I upset.
It's top heavy.
I upset the balance of the situation. So I can totally understand a guy who just wants to play a game and doesn't want to spend 20% of it or 25% of it shopping, and I understand that. You're right. I think another thing is that when I play at conventions, I will literally I always use pre-made characters, except for...
And then you give them everything you think they're going to need, and then you tell the players, hey...
Right.
Is there something you want?
Tales from the Loop, right? Yeah. And so in Tales from the Loop, it's not it's not a stuff heavy game. It's an investigative game. Your kids, how much stuff can you have, right? And so a lot of it is, can I get this? Yeah, sure. If you go to a 7-Eleven, you can probably buy that or whatever. And I think I've done that before. But in other games like Space Opera, almost any other game that I've run, I have pre-gen characters, and they have stuff already on the thing. And I make all the characters are usually in a folder, and they have the character sheet is in a plastic little
sheet
protective cover thingy, and so they can like write on it, and I give them pins, dry erase pins, and the character sheets in there, and they have their equipment list. And I also always add like 3 or 4 sheets of binder paper. Now they can use the binder paper for anything they want, write notes of the game, characters, or whatever. And I also say, look, you could also use that sheet of paper to write down what you want, or what you want to take, carry, or whatever that is strange and something that you believe is always something good you can have, right? And I think I used the idea of ball bearings in the past. Now, I think people use ball bearings to see if a room slopes or the area slopes a little bit. You could also throw it like when being chased behind you, and you throw it behind you, and people can slip and fall and stuff. And there's all kinds of uses for stuff I had never even thought about, right? And I'm like, and people have used that in the past or wrote something like that. Like I think you have a grappling hook in Feng Shui. What was that?
Feng Shui grappling hook.
So did the grappling hook come with the character, or did you come up with that one?
I think I found it somewhere. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
But I'm a second story person, so you got.
So there's all kinds of stuff that, and so all kinds of stuff that I don't think about, but players would think. And I go, just write it down, or tell me what it is, and then I'll tell you. Yeah, you can have that, right? Like, and so I would be very.
Didn't this make it so when you played again, somebody said, "Oh, I'm going to do this, and I have this," and you're like. He goes, it's written down right here.
Yes, that happened before too. And I'm like, oh, okay, if I allowed it before and the person didn't use it, and it's still on your character. So that was interesting. Yeah, I that has happened too, because I use the same characters over and over again in my games. And I don't run the same game. I run different adventures, but the characters are the same. So
I guess it depends for shopping. It depends on the game.
Yes.
How much you need of different things. Like if you need provisions and stuff, a lot of times Saul goes, okay, you all bought whatever you need and you're going to leave at 6:00 in the morning. You got your provisions today.
Right.
Go to sleep or whatever.
Right. I think what I do is now, I think that's talked about. We kind of touched this subject a little bit in the past. And I said, usually, unless you want something new, something unusual, it'll cost you 10, 20 gold or whatever I think is appropriate depending on the game and the level of the characters to have all the stuff that you already have on your sheet. Like, for example, fix your armor, resharpen your sword, or fix your sword, or
buy more arrows,
those kind of provisions. Also food and stuff like that. I don't ask you to write off every day that you have that you're out
I've
there.
eaten 2 oat cakes.
Yeah, whatever. And I don't do that, so I just say, that's why when you get into town or somewhere where you can buy stuff or reprovision, I say, it'll cost you 10 gold, 20 gold, blah, blah. And I won't worry about the details. And I won't worry about the deals. And I think that for me is the best way to deal with that, unless the players want specific items.
Yes.
Specific stuff or strange items.
Like, one time they killed not a dragon. They killed something with dragon scales, or they came upon a dead dragon. Like, and Ian wanted to take the dragon scales and take them somewhere and have them made into what was it? A coat or something?
I think it was like a
armor, a piece of armor,
like a breastplate.
And so he literally had this bag full of dragon scales. And when he got into town, he said, "Where can I go to get this done?" So he went to the armor guy, probably a blacksmith, or
it depends on I forget what town it was. If it was a big town, then he would be. I don't know. You either go to a tanner, right?
Yeah, that's what it was, a tanner, and so that's what he specifically had that request, right? So, how long are you going to be in this town? We're going to be here for 2 weeks because we're resting. So then off you go.
Yeah, I think
for special things, right?
So he had to talk to the tanner because he would be the closest thing that could deal with that. And then he goes, "Well, I could tan it and stuff, but then I don't know how to make armor, so you have to take." So I kind of did like a double.
Yeah,
I charged him for the tanner and I charged him for the armor.
Yeah,
which actually turned out pretty good.
That's the way you make us use our money, but also that's the way that if you really want something, you can get it, right?
Right. And so in that case, I wouldn't just say, "Oh yeah, you could just add that to your list of make it into armor, no problem." I wanted there to be a process, and I wanted it not hurt, but to hit the pocketbook a little harder.
Yeah.
Than I would if I said, well, I just charge you $10.
So I guess it really depends on what you're doing, and if your players aren't into shopping, then just say, okay, everybody bought your rations, let's go. If players are into shopping or need to buy, if you need to get your arrows in, there's no shop to buy arrows, you're gonna have to go to the Fletcher to get them made, or
make them yourself.
Yeah.
That's maybe. What I wouldn't do is if like one or two people like to shop and then there's like 5 people in your group and the rest of the 3 people are just sitting there and do not take an inordinate amount of time.
Right.
Like that guy who said that spent 2 hours shopping for her.
I would go.
I think it was,
I think the GM needs to, step in and, okay, you get your herbs, let's go.
I think it was a slight exaggeration. I can't imagine taking that long. How long do you think you guys ever spent shopping?
Maybe 10 minutes.
10 minutes?
Maybe.
I thought it might be a little bit longer.
It's all 6 of us doing different things.
Yeah, I think more like 20 at the most, and out of a 4-hour day or whatever. But I think a lot of times, because shopping became kind of weird in my games with you guys, because you would shop, but you would shop for a reason, like, I want to buy chairs so I can rent them to the event that
we're holding.
And it became kind of like,
it was an oddity. It was a time to do. It was like a downtime.
Yeah, like decompressing.
Yeah.
And I think that really, and shopping is part of decompression.
Yeah.
In most games, I think, when people don't have to worry about life and death situations. And here are the fruits of my labors, right? I get all this gold. I get to spend this gold or space credits, however you want to deal with it, when you play Firefly or you play Space Truckers.
Okay, I think we've exhausted the shopping.
Have we?
I believe so.
Did we talk about it, shopping in movies, and how that might influence people shopping in games?
Well, okay, shopping in movies might influence people shopping in games. There, we talked about it.
Well, I was just thinking like movies like, the closest one is, though he's not shopping, he just steals it, is the Terminator when he goes into the gun shop, right?
Yes, you did talk about that.
Oh, I already mentioned that?
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, so I think people are influenced by movies and books and stuff, so yeah, I wasn't sure if I had talked about that. So shopping can be something that people like to do. It seems like a lot of people don't like to do it. There's always all kinds of ways to do with shopping if you don't like to doing it and spending time role playing it. And a lot of people say do it offline, doing through email,
Google Sheets, Facebook.
There's all kinds of ways you can do it to not do it while you're playing. But I don't think spending 10 minutes shopping or asking can I get this special thing or that special thing, and during while role playing or before the session starts, kind of, or as a beginning as they set out of town or out of the city or whatever. I don't think that's such a terrible thing. And I think a lot of people like the idea of knowing and even bartering, right? Getting a deal. Like when they go when they go buying something special, they're like, well, that sounds a little high. How about this? And then there's that little bartering thing. And I think they really like thinking they got a deal on something.
Always.
So shopping, it's not for everybody in RPGs, but some people really like it. Obviously, there was that guy who did the whole shopping thing for his group, and some people don't like it. I think you can meet people in the middle ground and maybe do a little shopping. And
I'm going to say read your audience to see which way that you're going to go there.
Yeah, session 0 will probably help. How do you guys feel about shopping? Hate it. Okay, all right, we'll
not have that in there. So there you go. Hopefully this answered the question on shopping in RPGs. This is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul
and Jolene.
And you have a good day.